What's more dangerous than being struck by lightning once in your lifetime? Being struck 7 times and living through each electrifying encounter? That's right, we've got a story about a park ranger who became a human lightning rod, defying odds so astronomical they can barely be calculated. Hello everyone, welcome to Wow Amazing. In this video, we will go through our part 1 of top 10 luckiest people who survived the impossible. But before we begin, we would like you guys to subscribe to Wow Amazing and hit the notification bell so you do not miss out on amazing and entertaining content that will surely get you amazed. Now get ready, because this video is absolutely packed with tales that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about human survival. Number 10, Michael Holmes. Let's begin our countdown with a reminder that sometimes the difference between life and death comes down to a blackberry bush. It's December 2006 in New Zealand, and 25-year-old Michael Holmes is doing what he loves most, going fast toward the Earth at terminal velocity. An experienced skydiver with more than 7,000 jumps under his belt, Holmes leaps confidently from a plane over Lake Taupo, anticipating another perfect landing. But this day would be different. As Holmes reaches the altitude to deploy his parachute, something goes terribly wrong. His main parachute becomes hopelessly tangled, refusing to open properly. No problem for an experienced jumper, Holmes calmly cuts away the malfunctioning chute and deploys his reserve parachute. But fate wasn't done with him yet. In a skydiver's worst nightmare, the reserve parachute also malfunctions, sending Holmes into a violent, uncontrollable spin. With the ground rapidly approaching and no options left, Holmes does the only thing he can. He positions his body to create the least deadly impact possible. At 80 miles per hour, he crashes through tree branches before slamming into what would become his unlikely savior, a thick blackberry bush. When rescuers finally reach him, they expect to find a body. Instead, they discover Holmes not only alive but conscious. Against all medical understanding, the bush had absorbed just enough of the impact to prevent immediate death. His injuries were severe: a punctured lung, broken ankle, and significant damage to his internal organs, but somehow not fatal. Even more remarkable than his survival was his recovery. Within a year, this daredevil was back in the sky, skydiving again. When later asked about his miraculous survival, Holmes had a simple explanation: "I got really, really lucky." Sometimes it seems luck is all that stands between us and the inevitable. Number 9, Harrison OKeen. Our next story proves that sometimes your worst nightmare can become your escape. In May 2013, Harrison OKeen was working as a cook aboard the tugboat Jascon 4 off the coast of Nigeria. In the darkness of night, disaster struck without warning. A sudden ocean swell capsized the vessel, sending it plunging 100 feet to the seabed below. As the ship sank, OKeen was thrown from his bathroom and forced to swim through rapidly flooding corridors. While his 11 crewmates tragically drowned, OKeen somehow found his way to the engineer's office. There, by what can only be described as miraculous fortune, a pocket of air had formed. Now OKeen faced a truly horrifying situation. The water temperature was freezing. The oxygen was limited. The salt water was slowly eating away at his skin. Most terrifying of all, he could hear sea creatures feeding on the bodies of his former crewmates. For 60 hours, nearly 3 full days, OKeen sat on a small platform in his air bubble, praying and reciting a psalm his wife had shared with him. By all scientific understanding, he should have died multiple times over. When a diving team finally arrived, they were searching for bodies, not survivors. Imagine their shock when OKeen reached out and grabbed the hand of a diver who had entered his air pocket. The diver initially fled in terror, thinking he'd encountered a corpse. OKeen's rescue wasn't simple. To prevent deadly nitrogen bubbles from forming in his bloodstream, he required 60 hours of carefully calculated decompression before reaching the surface. His survival remains one of the most miraculous cases in maritime history, defying expert understanding of how long a person can survive in such conditions. Sometimes it seems even the depths of the ocean will spare a life. Number 8, Awa Vishnerska. They say what goes up must come down, but for our next survivor, coming down alive defied all expectations. In February 2007, professional paraglider Awa Vishnerska was training for the World Championships near Manila, Australia. Despite warnings about developing thunderstorms, the experienced Polish-German athlete decided to take advantage of the strong thermals. It was a decision that would test the very limits of human endurance. As she soared through the sky, Vishnerska was suddenly caught in a powerful updraft that sucked her upward at an alarming rate. Unable to escape the current, she was pulled higher and higher at nearly 66 feet per second, faster than an elevator in a skyscraper. Within minutes, Vishnerska had been carried to an altitude of 32,000 feet, higher than Mount Everest and well into what climbers call the death zone, where humans cannot survive without supplemental oxygen. The temperature around her plummeted to -40 degrees. Ice formed over her body and equipment. As hypoxia set in, she lost consciousness, completely at the mercy of nature's fury. While unconscious, her paraglider was pummeled by baseball-sized hailstones and lashed by lightning. For nearly an hour, the unconscious Vishnerska was carried more than 40 miles by the storm. By some miracle, instead of dropping her from this lethal height, the storm eventually released her from its grip, allowing her to gradually descend. When she regained consciousness, she managed to navigate safely to the ground, though she was disoriented and suffering from severe frostbite. Meteorologists and medical experts remain shocked by Vishnerska's survival. Humans typically cannot survive more than minutes at such altitudes without supplemental oxygen. The prevailing theory is that her slow acclimatization as she rose and the extreme cold that slowed her body functions combined to save her life. Number 7. Maro Prosperi. In April 1994, Italian athlete Maro Prosperi was competing in the Marathon des Sables, an ultramarathon known as the toughest foot race on Earth that sends competitors across 155 miles of the unforgiving Sahara Desert. On the 4th day of the 6-day race, disaster struck when Prosperi found himself caught in a fierce sandstorm. Visibility dropped to 0, and the 39-year-old police officer and Olympic pentathlete became hopelessly lost. When the sandstorm finally cleared after 8 hours, all course markers had disappeared, and Prosperi had veered wildly off course. For the next 9 days, with only a small number of supplies, Prosperi battled the merciless desert where temperatures soared above 115 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. After his water ran out, Prosperi resorted to drinking his own urine. He ate bats, snakes, and raw lizards, even drinking their blood to stay hydrated. At one point, believing death was inevitable, he attempted to end his life by cutting his wrists, but fate had other plans. His blood had thickened so much from dehydration that it clotted quickly, preventing him from bleeding out. Taking this as a sign, Prosperi continued walking. He lost nearly 35 pounds and traveled over 200 miles from his starting point, inadvertently crossing from Morocco into Algeria. Finally, he spotted a young nomadic girl who led him to her family's camp. By this time, rescuers had abandoned the search after 4 days, assuming Prosperi was dead. No one, they reasoned, could survive that long in such extreme conditions. Medics who treated him were astonished at his condition, having never seen someone so severely dehydrated still alive. Despite losing nearly 40% of his body weight and suffering kidney damage, Prosperi made a full recovery. Even more incredibly, he later returned to compete in the Marathon des Sables again, proving that his spirit was as indomitable as his survival instinct. Number 6. Roy Sullivan. They say lightning never strikes twice in the same place, but nobody told that to our next survivor. Meet Roy Sullivan, a park ranger from Virginia known as the Human Lightning Rod. Between 1942 and 1977, Sullivan was struck by lightning on 7 different occasions while performing his duties at Shenandoah National Park. The odds of being struck by lightning once in a lifetime are approximately 1 in 15,300. The odds of being struck 7 times? Roughly 1 in 10 to the power of 28. A number so astronomically improbable, it defies comprehension. Sullivan's first documented strike came in 1942, when lightning hit a fire tower he was sheltering in, singeing his leg and blowing off his big toenail. In 1969, lightning struck him again, burning off his eyebrows and knocking him unconscious. In 1970, another strike burned his left shoulder. The hits kept coming. In 1972, his hair was set on fire. In 1973, another strike injured his leg. In 1976, lightning injured his ankle. And in 1977, a final strike hospitalized him with chest and stomach burns. Sullivan's extraordinary bad luck led to depression later in life, as people began avoiding him for fear of being near him during storms. Medical experts remain baffled by Sullivan's ability to survive repeated electrical attacks that should have been fatal. Some theories suggest his body may have had unique electrical properties, while others believe his awareness of approaching storms may have helped him avoid direct strikes that would have been instantly fatal. Sometimes it seems surviving the impossible doesn't guarantee happiness. Number 5. Julian Kepsia. Our next survivor's story begins with what should have been her end, a 2-mile fall from the sky. On Christmas Eve 1971, a bolt of lightning struck Lanza Flight 508 as it flew through a severe thunderstorm over the Peruvian rainforest. The aircraft, carrying 92 passengers and crew, broke apart in midair, sending debris and victims plummeting toward the dense jungle below. Among the passengers was 17-year-old Julian Kepsia, who had been traveling with her mother. In what can only be described as mea culpa, Kepsia, still strapped to her seat row, fell approximately 2 miles from the sky into the jungle canopy. The dense foliage slowed her descent before she hit the ground, making her the sole survivor of the crash. Though alive, Kepsia's situation remained dire. She had sustained a broken collarbone, a deep gash on her arm, and a serious eye injury. Fortunately, Kepsia was not an ordinary teenager. As the daughter of biologists who worked in the Amazon, she had spent years learning survival skills. Using knowledge her father had taught her, she followed a small stream downhill, knowing it would eventually lead to larger waterways and human habitation. For 11 days, she moved through water filled with piranha and caiman, battled infection, starvation, and the psychological trauma of the crash. After nearly 2 weeks in the wilderness, she found a boat and small shelter, where lumbermen discovered her the next day. Of the 92 people aboard Flight 508, Kepsia was the only survivor. Experts say her survival is one of the most extraordinary cases of both crash survival and wilderness endurance ever documented. Number 4. Vestna Vulovich. On January 26, 1972, a 22-year-old flight attendant named Vestna Vulovich boarded Jet Flight 367 from Copenhagen to Belgrade. Due to a scheduling error, Vulovich had been mistakenly assigned to the flight, a mix-up that would lead to her name being etched in history forever. At 33,000 feet over Czechoslovakia, a bomb placed by Croatian nationalists exploded in the baggage compartment, tearing the DC-9 aircraft apart in midair. As the plane disintegrated around her, Vulovich, who was not scheduled to be on that flight, was pinned by a food cart in the tail section of the aircraft. This twist of fate saved her life. The tail section, with Vulovich still trapped inside, plunged toward the ground. After falling for 3 minutes, it slammed into a heavily wooded, snow-covered hillside. The trees and snow cushioned the impact just enough, and the fuselage configuration shielded her from the worst forces. Incredibly, while all other 27 passengers and crew perished instantly, rescuers found Vulovich severely injured, but alive among the trash. She had suffered a fractured skull, broken vertebrae that left her temporarily paralyzed from the waist down, 2 broken legs, and multiple fractured ribs. Vulovich spent days in a coma and was hospitalized for 16 months. Though she eventually recovered, she walked with a limp for the rest of her life. In a mark to her extraordinary fortitude, she repeatedly expressed a desire to return to flying, though the airline understandably gave her a desk job instead. Number 3. Anatoli Borski. What happens when a particle accelerator beam passes through your head? Before July 13, 1978, nobody could answer that question. After that date, only one person in history could: Soviet physicist Anatoli Borski. While working on the U-70 synchrotron at the Institute for High Energy Physics in Provino, Russia, Borski leaned into the path of the proton beam to check a malfunctioning piece of equipment. Unbeknownst to him, the safety mechanisms had failed, and the beam was active. Do you know a proton beam used in particle acceleration is not like a laser beam in science fiction movies? It's invisible and silent. The 36-year-old scientist didn't see, hear, or feel anything as the beam, delivering approximately 70 billion electron volts and moving at nearly the speed of light, passed through his head, entering through the back of his skull and exiting near his nose. According to Borski, he saw a flash brighter than 1,000 suns but felt no pain. The beam had delivered a radiation dose approximately 1,000 times the lethal amount, concentrated in a narrow channel through his brain. Doctors placed him in isolation, expecting him to die from radiation poisoning within days. But Borski didn't die. Though he lost hearing in his left ear and experienced seizures for the rest of his life, most of his intellectual capacity remained intact. The left side of his face became paralyzed and ceased aging, creating an unusual appearance as he grew older, one half of his face aging normally, while the other remained youthful. To this day, Borski remains the only person to have intercepted a particle accelerator beam with their head and survived, making his case absolutely unique in medical history. Number 2. Frra Celak. If luck were a spectrum, Croatian music teacher Frra Celak would occupy both extremes simultaneously, experiencing the worst accidents imaginable while somehow surviving each one. Celak's extraordinary run of near-death experiences began in January 1962, when a train he was traveling on derailed and plunged into an icy river, killing 17 passengers. Celak escaped with a broken arm and hypothermia. Just a year later, during his first and only airplane flight, the door of the small aircraft blew off mid-flight, and Celak was sucked out. The plane crashed, killing 19 people, but Celak somehow landed in a haystack with minor injuries. In 1966, a bus he was riding skidded off the road and into a river, drowning 4 passengers. Celak swam to safety with cuts and bruises only. In 1970, his car caught fire while driving, and he managed to escape seconds before the fuel tank exploded. In 1995, Celak was struck by a bus in Zagreb, but sustained only minor injuries. Perhaps most dramatically, in 1996, he drove around a bend to find a United Nations truck coming directly at him. His car careened through the guardrail and off a 300-foot cliff. Celak was thrown clear of the vehicle before it crashed at the bottom. He landed in a tree and watched his car explode below. After surviving 7 brushes with death, Celak's luck finally turned conventionally good in 2003, when at the age of 74, he won 800,000 euros, approximately $1 million, in the lottery. Deciding he had tempted fate enough, he gave away most of his winnings to family and friends, living modestly until his death in 2016 at the age of 87. Mathematicians have calculated the odds of experiencing just 3 of these accidents in one lifetime as virtually impossible, leading many to call Celak either the luckiest or unluckiest man who ever lived, depending on your perspective. Number 1. Sutou Yamaguchi. Our final story proves that sometimes lightning really does strike twice, and some people live to tell about it. On August 6, 1945, 29-year-old naval engineer Sutou Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima on a business trip. What happened that morning would shock the world and result in one of the most extraordinary survival stories ever documented. Yamaguchi was walking to his workplace when a B-29 bomber appeared in the sky. Moments later, the world's first atomic bomb used in warfare detonated approximately 2 miles away. The blinding flash and devastating shockwave threw him to the ground, ruptured his eardrums, and severely burned the left side of his body. Despite his injuries, Yamaguchi managed to seek shelter and tend to his wounds. The next day, he somehow found the strength to board a train back to his hometown. His hometown, Nagasaki. On August 9th, with his burns still fresh and his ears still ringing, Yamaguchi reported to work. While explaining to his disbelieving supervisor what had happened in Hiroshima, the sky outside their window suddenly filled with the same terrible flash he had witnessed 3 days earlier. Against odds that defy calculation, Yamaguchi had found himself at the epicenter of both atomic bomb attacks that ended World War II. When the dust settled, approximately 200,000 people had perished in the 2 bombings. Yamaguchi survived both, despite being exposed to nearly double the radiation that killed thousands. Yamaguchi recovered from his burns and radiation sickness. The long-term effects included ongoing health problems, but in a twist that confounded medical experts, he lived for another 65 years. What makes Yamaguchi's story even more remarkable is what he did with his improbable survival. Rather than being consumed by bitterness, he became a vocal advocate for nuclear disarmament, using his unique status as a Niju Hibakusha, twice-bombed person, to campaign for peace. Yamaguchi passed away in 2010 at the age of 93, outliving many who weren't exposed to any radiation at all. Yamaguchi remains the only person officially recognized by the Japanese government to have survived both atomic bombings, a distinction that stands as perhaps the most extreme example of surviving what should have been, by all scientific standards, unsurvivable trauma. Sometimes it seems fate makes exceptions, even for the most destructive forces humans have ever unleashed. And there you have it, 10 of humanity's most extraordinary stories of survival against impossible challenges. Also, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll bring you more tales that defy explanation. And if you know someone who needs a reminder of just how resilient the human spirit can be, share this video with them. As always, stay amazed, stay inspired, and remember, sometimes beating the impossible is just a matter of refusing to give up. This is Wow Amazing, signing off until next time.